Lindsay, welcome to the Wine After Work podcast. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, we were having fun chatting before, and I felt like we could have talked for hours. We're like, better press record. So tell us all about Green Wallscapes and how you are the moss boss.
So I started Green Wallscapes in my house 2016, 2017. I was just like making things in my house for fun. I made a piece one Saturday night and a friend saw it and they were like, hey, do you want to make one for me? And it was like that for about 2 or 3 years. And then in 2018, the job that I had was ending and I needed another job. And my husband said, Linz, why don't you see if you can make Green Wallscapes a thing? And I said to him, I'm like, Green Wallscapes isn't a thing. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I think we had an Etsy store at that point. It really wasn't a business. And yeah, so like around 2018, I just started in my house and somehow people found us. I think we were really early in the moss wall game, if you will. And sort of how it came to be was I had seen these on Pinterest and it was all companies in Europe. And I think there was one company in California that was doing it at the time. They had been doing it for like a long time. I guess they'd been importing from Europe. And so I was like, those are beautiful, but we didn't have $3,000 to spend on a moss wall. So I was like, okay, I can make this. So we made one and then it sort of began the impetus for the rest of the business. And now it sounds like really easy, like, oh, we just rolled out of bed. The other part that I'm not talking about is that I spent, probably 15 years in business development. Before that, meeting all sorts of architects and designers and all those things. And my husband's also in a landscape architecture company, like we were just discussing before. And so he could see what the trends were. I mean, he works in, the architecture world. And so that was just it was like, this is where the trend is going. The trend is going towards biophilia, but people are looking for something for inside that doesn't require a lot of maintenance. And so that's where the moss walls come in because they are a product that was alive, but it's no longer living. We like to say in South Florida that it's been Botoxed. In the rest of the world, it's in suspended animation. It's not growing. You don't need to water it. It's meant to just like be put on the wall, just like a regular wall covering.
And I love that you don't have to water it because I'm telling you, I cannot keep any plants alive. Like knock on wood, I have one in my house that I've had for a long time. That's super easy because it just looks limp and you give it water and it comes back to life. How do they stay green?
So they stay green because they've gone through a preservation process. So basically where water is, the water's taken out and glycerin is put in. And then it gets dyed and all sorts of other things to all these other fun colors. And so it's a food grade dye that they put in the moss. Kind of like, I'm sure you've seen those roses that are blue and things like that. It's a very similar process to that. It's been really wonderful because, they have some nice longevity. Typically we say 3 to 5 years before they need any sort of maintenance or touch up or things like that. And then we started doing work with succulents. We started doing work with ferns and other things like that a little bit more recently because people started requesting those as well. We've done work with faux orchids and things like that. I'm just really particular if we're using any faux materials that they look really real so people can't tell. And, it's the person who's our client is a very discerning, design oriented person. They're not necessarily price conscious. We'll just put it that way.
Okay. That was going to be my next question because I've seen some of these in office buildings. I'm sure I was thinking high-end homes, of course. And then, I've seen some just in cool commercial spaces, shopping center type thing. So who is your customer?
We're mostly commercial. I would say that in the last 2.5 weeks, we've done projects for Hilton, Marriott, and Dollywood. So like we get to do some really cool projects. Yeah. So the Dollywood one was actually honestly the one that I was like the most excited about.
Yeah, that's so fun. And did you travel? Like, are you traveling to these locations?
No. So all of our work ships all over the country. So we've done projects in almost every state in the United States. And they're installed by local installers. And if they have run into any problems, they call us, but we really work to make it very simple. We have all sorts of guides and other things like that for the local people. So it just makes it a lot easier because not a lot of people make these. And then for us to have to travel to all these locations, like we just logistics do that. We have certain clients that at a certain scale, they want us to come because it just makes more sense, or they just have a big budget and they just are like, great, have your team come, have them install it. Like we'll be really happy if that happens. So, like again, but we have all the different kinds of options for clients. But my whole life is sexy and exciting as all of this sounds. Most of my life is spent talking about backers, talking about, how am I going to fit this thing in a box? What size box do I need? Those kinds of things. The design part of it is such a small part of it. And I have a whole team for that. But the most of my life is just making sure that it gets there in one piece, that it's got the appropriate fireproofing on it, all that stuff that's required for, commercial interior work.
I feel like that is the behind the scenes of most businesses. Like, oh, it seems like I'm flying on a private jet and installing these everywhere, but no, I'm trying to figure out how to
private jet yet. When's that coming?
I'm wondering that for me as well.
Yeah.
At least, the jet share, whatever. I'll take it.
Anything, any jet. Wait, how do I get on the jet? I need some friends with jets, I think. It's kind of like boat. You want friends with boat. You don't want to be the one with the boat kind of thing.
100%.
Unfortunately, I got to work on that. That's got to be my goal for this year, kind of thing. Get friends with jet.
I like that. A 2024 goal.
I can leave you with anything. No.
And so where are you creating these? Do you have a big commercial like art studio?
Yes.
What does that look like?
Yes. I have a team of 7 people that are full and part-time that work with me on, bringing these designs to life. Like I said, I started this just me. And then there was a woman who was actually like staying in our little back cottage, and she was my first helper. And then it like grew from there. But I've consistently had a team of like between 5 and 10, depending on demand, for the last couple of years. Yeah. I mean, we run it like a regular fabrication business. I mean, we have to think through, okay, what from idea and concept and what the client wants all the way through execution, like what materials do we need to buy? How do we, and then the step-by-step, how do we fabricate the backers and the logos and all of that stuff? And then what moss do we require? And then, going through that same exact process every single time. Because we've done over 1,000 of these, we have it down pretty tight at this point.
That's awesome.
Every once in a while, I get like a ringer. We had a ceiling project that's been a little bit challenging because it's like, how do you make sure that the stuff doesn't fall off the ceiling? And we actually just started doing custom colors, which is really for certain companies, like they're like, this is our branding color, and we can get pretty close to the Pantone of the exact color for brands. So that's been a really exciting thing, for our more discerning clients. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going through a rebrand for Career Collective right now. So we're trying to figure out all the colors and those things. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and it's crazy. Like when you start diving into that, like what the different colors mean and all that kind of stuff. So right now, I think we have one project, I think it's 4 or 5 colors that we're creating for this client because they have like colors that just don't exist in moss. So we had to come up with a way to make them exist in moss. So it's been a really cool project. Yeah.
So of your staff, what kind of backgrounds are these people coming from? Are they, in horticulture? Are they landscape architects? Or they just love design and working with plants?
So they're all over the place. I mean, there is an industry that's called, which I didn't realize I was in, called the interior plantscaping industry, which is people who do, mostly like in office buildings, you see those plants and some living walls and things like that. Moss is very much a subset of that. And the moss walls are very much a subset of that. They don't like it that much because they don't require maintenance. The reason that most plantscaping companies they like that they come in and they have to water the plants and do all that stuff. They like the maintenance aspect of this. But anyway, so we fall in that category. And where was I going with this? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I had a light bulb moment because living wall I've heard of. And then the fact that you're a subset of that, but yours requires like no maintenance.
Yes.
So like you say, they want that reoccurring monthly revenue so they can come in and touch them up. I'm your girl because I want 0 maintenance.
Right. And the other thing that's really fun about this and using this material specifically is that, we can do really different with living walls. It's like you have trays and you put the plants in and some of them go like this and some of them go like that. And that's it. Like that's the limit to what you can do. With ours, you can like build stuff up. You can get into a lot of the details with the logo itself. There's a lot of things. There's just ways that we can do design with the moss that you can't really do with living plants. And listen, I love the living plants. Like a good living plant wall there's nothing better, but it also has to be the right environment. I mean, those plants, they require irrigation, they require lighting, they require maintenance, and it's not all the time for some of the systems, but it's still something that, clients have to factor in. Not only is the startup cost more, but then there's the ongoing,
right.
$500,000 a month that people are going to have to pay to maintain these walls. And so anyway, so with interior plantscaping, it was just like that's a whole industry of people that I just stumbled into, not my background. And my employees, I mean, I've had a couple who have come from that world, but most of the time they are living plant people. And I will say that living plant people are not the same as preserved moss people. I don't know how to explain it, but
okay.
They get upset. And the same thing a lot with the floral industry. We've had florists who have worked for us before, and they just I don't know, the faux thing throws them off. They don't really like it. We've had people who have been formally trained artists. We've had people who have been, literally just have done other production jobs and learned how to do this. We have a whole training program that we do with people. It's very systematized. Like, can they graduate from this? Can they do this kind of lettering? Can they do this kind of cut? Those kinds of things. And we really do a systematized approach so that we get the look and feel consistently. Most of our employees are trained anywhere from 30 to 60 days before they're actually touching client projects, so that they can start to get the feel of it. And then the more advanced stuff where we're really doing, when we start getting into really heavy succulents and things like that, that's, probably takes most people that work with us 6 months to a year to really get. And we're always finessing it and changing it and all that kind of stuff. Making systems and standards and all of that stuff. The last 2 years have really been about writing down processes, and it's super boring stuff, but okay, it has to look like this. It can't look like that. For example, we work a lot with this one moss. It's called reindeer moss. And it's these little poofs of moss, and it comes and it has a scraggly bottom and a round part on the top.
Okay.
And we will actually sort the material so that we make sure that the round parts are, we have those perfect round bulbous tops on all of them, because it gives it a beautiful effect. I've also seen other moss companies, they literally take a handful of moss, put some glue down, and put the moss down in every which direction. And you don't get the same effect. You don't even, so it's very difficult to explain to people that the reason that our stuff costs what it does is because we're literally taking designer grade moss, resorting it again. I have a woman on my team, her entire job is just to organize the moss for us. So, it's a really
part of Moss University, right?
It's part of Moss University. Exactly. It's a really weird thing, but it's something that I think sets our work apart and allows us to really do some exceptional thing. And I would say that there's probably 3 to 5 companies within the United States that do work at our level. I would say that I've seen, and I'm wow, they know how to do this. They execute beautifully. I am inspired by what they're doing. They're using color in a really unique way. They have some way that they're doing design that's really elevated. And then everybody else is oh, well, I can glue moss to things. And you see there's just these subtle differences that, make a huge difference, at scale. It
sounds like your client is different, obviously, than those clients, because you said they're not afraid to spend the money to get the look that they want. I'm in a niche business. Yours is a niche of a niche, and they say that the riches are in the niches. So I'm wondering if you have found that, and if you guys will, expand your offering.
I had a baby a year ago at 41 years old, like a crazy person. Thank you. So, our initial idea was, grow it into, having living plants. Again, the synergies with my husband and his companies that do landscape architecture,
I love that.
Maintenance, all that stuff.
Crossover.
There's some good crossover, but frankly, I've been super focused on the moss walls, and we've had enough work with the moss walls to sustain us. I think the business is sort of starting to plateau at what we can really do and what I'm actually capable of doing as a new mother. At this point in time, I think there's definitely opportunity for growth. I just actually had to turn our marketing off because we have so much work that I'm I can't, it's this time of year, everybody needs a moss wall. I don't know what it is. I call them all summer. I say, are you ready for your moss wall? They say, no, it's just that it's end of fiscal year. want to get things done before Thanksgiving, want to get things done before Christmas, need to get money out before next year kind of thing. All of that stuff happens this quarter. So typically we make most of our money in this quarter. And so it's challenging because I've got to keep my employees employed the whole year, and they're employed, like it's fine. We're working, but it's just, now it's game time. We're moving.
Gotcha. Yeah. Because it fluctuates so much. So that makes sense. We didn't know until last year, we're not having as many people start a new position in November or December, but like you said, everybody wants to get the money off the books. So we're like, wow, we brought in a lot of money in December.
Right. Exactly. Like just get them in, and then they can start January 15th or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But we pay you now.
Yes, exactly. They want to get it off the books.
And we're like, I am here for that. I am ready for you to get that off your book. No problem.
I will accept your checks.
Exactly.
No problem.
I'm always like, okay, you got Venmo, you got wire transfer, carrier pigeon. I will take money any way you want to send it.
Exactly.
It's very funny.
Kudos to you for balancing being a new mom and a business that you're growing and scaling. I have to ask about work-life balance and how you're striking the balance, if at all.
I'm not. I mean, it's basically like, my daughter's in daycare. We have a nanny on top of that. And we also have someone who cooks for us. We have someone who cleans for us. We have someone, like, I have outsourced basically everything I would do as a person. Because when we don't do that, we don't eat well. Our house is a mess. And luckily our nanny, who we love, she comes in the afternoons. She also tidies up and makes sure we have a whole support system that basically we have to pay so that I can have this business. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I also would say to any new mother who also owns a business, if you can afford a night nurse, get a night nurse, especially in the beginning, because it just changes your experience of early motherhood. Personally, it was a game changer because she would come and we'd sleep through the night, and then you just love your baby so much because you're not just totally dead.
So sleep deprived. Yeah, I feel like being able to sleep is a huge game changer, but
it really
I love that you're pulling the curtain back on that as well, because you can't do all the things. That's Instagram versus reality. It's like you cannot run a business, cook for everybody, get the groceries, clean your house, and shower, take care of yourself. I wish I had a glam squad sometimes, but I love that you're like, we will outsource everything we need to get it done.
Well, and when we don't, my husband and I fight. And I have found that I'd like to stay married because I love him very much. And
we have this kid to raise together now.
And, I think that a lot of people put themselves at a disadvantage. You just have to be like, this is a very short window where money is going to be flying out the door. Daycare is $1 billion. Nannies are $1 billion. The organic formula is $1 billion. This thing's $1 billion. Like everything is $1 billion. And then it ends, right? Like then they, they're in daycare still, but they're not needing as much nannying on the weekends and things like that. The other thing that I also have is I have the world's best mother-in-law and father-in-law.
Oh, that's
just
sweet.
Like so helpful. And my daughter will sleep over there every once in a while. Like, in the last couple of weeks, she slept over a lot, but that's a whole nother conversation. And we're like, thank you.
I mean, it truly takes a village.
Mm-hmm.
I say that all the time. Like, I don't know how two working parents do it otherwise. I heard a speaker this morning and she said she's, CEO level, and her husband started staying at home. He was Mr. Mom, because how else do you do it?
You don't.
Kids get sick and someone's got to be with them. Can't leave them home alone too long.
No. And the nice thing about being an entrepreneur, though, I will say that like if my daughter is homesick, I can work from home, and I can actually work from home. It's okay, kind of thing. And I know that there's a lot more flexibility now. And I would say it's very interesting, having run my business all the way through the pandemic, pre-pandemic, the attitude about work and all of those things. And then during the pandemic, we actually were open the entire time during the pandemic.
I was wondering what you were doing during 2020.
So believe it or not, we fall under construction services. So we were able to stay open because that was an essential service. Nice. Also, at that point, I think I had 5 employees. So we were able to we would just skirt under whatever the rules were.
Yeah.
But with the team, I mean, it was, and I knew that my team was also literally going home and sitting at home on the weekends, and we're just dying to get back to the office on Monday because they're like, please. And I remember them saying to me, and I was like, well, guys, what do we want to do? I've never been a CEO in a global pandemic before. How does one do this? You know what I mean? And so, there was a period where we were like wearing masks, and the girls at that time were actually wearing these like almost like paint masks because of the glue we were using. We stopped using that, but there was, like to protect them. So that worked against COVID also. And literally no one
we're already wearing these. It works out.
Yeah. And no one got COVID until I think 2021 or something like that. It wasn't until, things started opening back up and people started dinner and Christmas and all this kind of stuff. And then it was like everybody who hadn't gotten COVID got COVID. So and it's very interesting to talk about it like so nonchalant now when it was just so heavy then.
Oh my word. Yeah.
And we were then, and we went through every single thing. Like you would read it in the thing, like, oh, great resignation. Yep. Had that, like the crazy demand. I mean, we at one point, I think had a 16-week lead time. Like now it's like, we're more like 4 to 8 weeks, which is a great lead time for us, for our industry. And very comfortable because you have enough room to like prepare and you have enough room, but it's not like you have 16 weeks of lead time. People call you and I'm like, I'm really sorry. I just can't get the material fast enough. And all those elements, it was like, I couldn't get material for a period. I couldn't get employees for a period. We moved in the middle of the pandemic. I mean, it was just all sorts of things. So, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
It's so true. And looking back, we're like, how did we get through that? And to your point, yes, people were ordering things like couches and waiting a year for them. So I don't even feel like 16 weeks is that bad.
Yeah. I mean, there were times when I was like, I will tell you 16 weeks, but that's if the moss can get here, kind of thing, because it was like everyone woke up and needed a moss wall. And it was a very weird moment. And I would say that there's still plenty of people out there. What we've noticed though, in 2023 versus previous years, we used to have a lot of projects, and I would say the $3,000 to $7,000 range. Most of my projects now are either $1,500 or they're $20,000. The middle is completely gone for the most part. It is so interesting. Really weird. It's like all that slush money for these smaller companies, and I see the overall outlook. That's all gone, but big companies are still spending, and little tiny companies or companies that would have done that $3,000 to $5,000 wall are now doing the, $1,500 to $2,000 wall kind of thing. And so it's just a different moment, it's just different. We keep rolling with the punches, and
it's always changing.
It's always changing. And, I have gotten just very used to being tired, being stressed out, being, upset, being, and I had an employee who just recently started and she was working in another company where her bosses were yelling constantly about everything. And then when she came here, I don't yell. I'm like, okay, well, that's a mistake. We got to fix it. Like there's it doesn't help to like,
you're like, there's no point.
Right. There's no point.
Mistake. Figure it out. Move on.
Let's fix this. And let's anticipate this for future times so that we don't do this again. That's all that I expect from people. If people continuously make mistakes, then we have other conversations.
Yeah.
And she was like in shock that I didn't blow up. I didn't get over. I was just like, well, this is just part of it. We make things with our hands. Like there aren't many people who are doing like artisanal level work where you're like cutting things with your hands and gluing things with your hands. There's no machines in this. It's, it's something you can really easily do with a machine.
Yeah.
And so, we're just kind of like, just going to keep doing it until people don't want it anymore. But, every time I'm like, business is over, then like I get 10 calls and I'm like, okay, business is not over, I guess.
I love that we go to that worst place in our mind. Like, well, that's it. I guess
that's
we have to shut our doors.
Yeah. Well, we did it. It was really nice. Well, it lasted. And I've started other companies before. This is by far my most successful company, but it's also been the biggest challenges of my life. Recruiting has been difficult. Keeping people has been difficult. Florida is just its own magical universe.
It's its own country, especially South Florida.
South Florida. Yes, exactly. So it's been a really big learning curve. And, I'd say, thank God we have certain systems and other things like that in place because it helps us just keep, create continuity for our clients. So, I was like, we got to write all this stuff down because if something happens to me during labor or whatever, you guys need to be able to like keep yourselves employed. Like this company needs to be able to work without me. And that's sort of like some of the things that we've been working on. Does it work without me? No, but will it eventually? Maybe.
Well, that's really smart. And you sound like
Yeah.
such a great leader,
Aw.
honestly. Yeah. So tell us about one of your most memorable projects.
So we recently did a very cool project for Marriott, for their headquarters, in Orlando. They have and I hope I can talk about this, but I'm going to.
Secrets out.
Yeah. And so, basically it's such a classic story of my world. So I was dealing with a subcontractor to a subcontractor under a project manager. So we were paying like this terrible telephone. And so one day I get a phone call and this woman goes, "Oh, thank God you picked up." And I was like, "Hello." And she's like, and it was the interior designer from Marriott. And she goes, "I have a really insane deadline. I need you to deliver this to me." Like, I think we had 5 or 6 weeks to do 2 enormous walls for them. And I was like, "Okay, well, we can do it, but I need to figure out what are we making you and all this kind of stuff." And so she sent me this hexagon design. We completely had to redesign it. I actually was on vacation in Martha's Vineyard with no cell phone reception, holding my phone out the window, being like, "Okay, we've got to do this with the hexagons because they're getting distorted and things are wonky. And then I don't like the flow of this." I mean, it was just it was really, really hectic, but we got it done on time. Literally, it was delivered the day before it was supposed to be delivered.
Yay.
Yay.
Good for you.
But it was one of those things where it was and the team had to develop some new processes to be able, because we weren't getting the outlines for the hexagons, we actually had to develop a process to create inserts. I mean, it was really an intensive, collaborative thing. Oh yeah. And we also had to create a custom color for that one. So that was another thing where it was okay, well, we'll have to do the custom color first, not in the hexagon, so we wouldn't get the color on the hexagon itself. I mean, there was this whole thing that we had to, and my studio manager, who's really brilliant, he came up with a whole process, and we actually have now started to use it on some other projects and things like that. So it's really cool, how much innovation came out of that. One of the things that we do in our company is Kaizens. A Kaizen is basically continuous improvement. So and we write them all down. So all right, here's, this was the situation that we were in. We're in an impossible deadline. We weren't going to get the outlines until, probably a week after we needed them. So what do we do? Those kinds of things. Yeah. And then thinking outside the box in terms of how do we deliver? And so those things, we write everything down so that at the end of the year, we can see look at this improvement, look at this improvement. And they're all microscopic things. And they're all collected. And it's oh yeah, that's a really good one. We should remember to do that one again, kind of thing. Yeah. Some of them are major, some of them are super minor, but it's also to help my team think in a different way, think towards solutions, not think towards problems, and think towards blaming. Okay, so that's not the way we do this. How do we work towards, a more solutions oriented response? Basically.
Yeah, and spend more time on the solution than you do thinking about the problem.
Right. Or fighting with each other about, well, I want to do it this way and you want to do it that way. Well, what is the best way to do it? And let's write that down. Let's standardize it. Let's do this. Yeah. Let's do that.
We're all about standardizing things here. We love an SOP.
Oh my goodness.
I really hate them, but it's a necessary evil, Well, like you said, you got to have them.
You got to have them, because when you bring somebody new in, you could say, and then, you do also have a process for testing your SOPs, because what worked at a certain scale, what worked at a certain size, isn't going to work at that next phase. I mean, 100%. I was having this conversation the other day with one of my best friends he's in the 4th year of his business. And he's like, "Yeah, Linz, what worked for you last year isn't going to work for you this year. You got to find people, and you got to find resources, and you got to find techniques that are going to work for you for the next phase." And it's very difficult, because not everybody can come. Not everything is going to work the way that it used to work. And you have to have that kind of infinite flexibility. You cannot be rigid when you own a company. You just can't. And then when you're a mother on top of it, forget it. Your life is,
So true. So true. And things happen at the most inopportune time, always.
1000%.
Someone gets sick, husband has to travel for work, something.
Yeah. My husband all last week was in DC, and I was by myself, and my daughter is in her 12-month sleep regression. And so we were just having a joyous time. I don't think I slept for literally the entire week. And so there are times, yesterday I cried. There is no reality in which this is easy. None. This is just not And in America specifically, where there's no government support for women, and things like that. And being a woman-owned business, like I've had employees who have been pregnant before. And the worst part about it is not being able to give them some sort of support. It's just like, we just don't have the bandwidth. I'm too small for a lot of these
small
things.
Business. Yeah.
Right. I can't pay somebody's salary for 3 months if they're not working. Like that's not gonna fly. But, collectively, I think to make people a little bit more excited about that, and 3 months is not even remotely long enough, so we can go on and on and on about
that. Europe's doing it right. We're not. But I will say, for no sleep, and people can't see you, but Lindsay, you look gorgeous. You look like you're awake and you're ready to party.
I slept last night. That's what it was. I told my husband, I was like, I've got this podcast. I need you to like step it up. Yesterday I did not look like this. It's okay.
Well, you look great.
You're so sweet.
Well, tell us where we can find you and your business and all the things.
You can find my website at greenwallscapes.com. We're on everything: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, at Green Wallscapes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thank you so much.
Having you.
It was so much fun. It was great to meet you.
You as well.